At a press conference moments ago, state officials confirmed a suite of bullion products that will be sold through the Texas Comptroller's office and integrated with the Texas Bullion Depository. Now, that's the first state-run precious metals vault in the country.
And look, there is a website right now that ends in .gov. State government website, official, sovereign. And on that website, the state of Texas is listing official state gold and silver products and routing buyers to approved retailers. Not a coin dealer running his own operation, not a broker with a newsletter. A state government building its own system for buying and storing metals. You've been told for 30 years that gold is for conspiracy theorists and doomsday preppers.
The gold market is rallying sharply here today with pushing spot just about $5,100 on the spot level. Now, it looks like Texas is moving from simply storing wealth to actively distributing it.
Meanwhile, your savings account has been bleeding purchasing power every single month. Your retirement fees compound while your dollar shrinks. And the people telling you not to own gold, their central bank runs the dollar. And that dollar, by their own inflation math, now buys about 13 cents of what it bought in 1971. You were right to be suspicious. And here's something worth knowing right now. If you live in Texas and store precious metals at this state depository, they are exempt from local property taxes. That's not a loophole. It's a constitutional amendment Texas voters approved. It's on the books. But the reason Texas built this vault has nothing to do with property taxes. It has everything to do with New York. Specifically, a rule that decides which gold vaults in this country are considered official and which ones aren't. Texas doesn't qualify under that rule, and that matters more than you might think for the price of every hard asset you own. Two names you need to know: Giovanni Cabriglione, Texas State Representative, author of the bill that created this operation, and Glenn Hegar, the Texas Comptroller who built it. What they want: to make Texas the commodities infrastructure hub of the South, an alternative to New York-centric monetary systems.
That is remarkable to know. Not only the largest vault here in the state of Texas, but has the capacity to hold more gold than that of Fort Knox.
On the other side of the table, Jerome Powell and the Federal Reserve. What they want: to keep the dollar the world's most powerful currency. What they say publicly, their official goal is price stability. And let's stop right there. Price stability. That's what they call it when they slowly drain the value out of every dollar you've saved. One clean phrase. Sounds responsible, feels safe, but 2% inflation every year for 50 years quietly shaves off about 63% of your purchasing power. By design, on purpose. They engineered the slow evaporation of your net worth and named it stability. Texas checked that math. Then they built a sovereign vault now holding over $400 million in deposited metal for the stuff that doesn't lose value on purpose. And here's what I'd be looking at right now. You don't have to keep your physical metals in a coffee can buried next to your azaleas, although I'm not against that. But you can hold them in a state-audited facility protected by Texas State Police, completely outside the traditional banking system. That is an active defense play that actually exists in the real world. Now let's talk numbers, because the story your savings account told you doesn't match what actually happened. In 1971, Nixon cut the dollar's link to gold. Prices since then are about 8 times higher. Your dollar buys roughly 13 cents of what it used to. Meanwhile, gold has gone from $35 an ounce to over $5,000, and JP Morgan's research desk is now forecasting $6,300 an ounce by end of 2026. And here's what that means at your kitchen table. $50,000 in gold in 2000, about 178 ounces at $280 each. Those same ounces today, now over $700,000. $50,000 in a savings account in 2000, roughly $85,000. Same 25 years, very different outcome. Your insurance premiums, they went up 23%. Your property taxes went up 18%. Your grocery bill went up 26%. And they went on national television and said inflation was manageable. Manageable for the institutions printing the money maybe, not for anyone trying to maintain their solvency in retirement. Here's the solution buried in that data. The question isn't whether you own gold. The question is whether your current portfolio reflects what the dollar has actually done since 2020. If it doesn't, that's the gap worth closing. Now here's what Texas is actually telling you with all of this. For the last 50 years, the formula was simple. Just work hard, save dollars. Trust the system to protect what you built. But look at what the system actually did. It printed more dollars, and every new dollar it printed quietly diluted the ones you had already saved. The people who stayed ahead didn't do it by working harder and saving harder. They did it by owning things that the government can't print. Real estate, gold, hard assets financed with long-term fixed debt. So inflation works for them instead of against them. And that's not a theory. That's what the math shows every single time the dollar gets stretched. Texas sees it too. That's why they built a vault. That's why Wyoming set aside $10 million for a state gold reserve in 2025. That's why Alabama, Idaho, Tennessee, and Kentucky all passed sound money legislation this year alone. They're not doing it because gold is fashionable. They're doing it because assets the government can't print behave differently than assets it can. So there are really only two categories here. Category one, things the government can print, dollars, bonds, savings accounts, dollar-denominated retirement funds. Category two, things they can't. Real estate, where you hold the deed, physical metals, hard assets with fixed debt working in your favor. So the question is simple. When you look at your retirement, how much is in category one and how much is in category two? Now here's the hidden connection nobody else is talking about. There is an organization called COMEX, the Commodity Exchange, part of CME Group. They are one of the main arenas for gold price discovery in the world. And here's the part that matters. Their rulebook says the only vaults that count for official gold trading must be within 150 miles of New York City. Not 151, 150. Texas, the second largest economy in the country, cannot host a single COMEX eligible deliverable vault under that rule. Here's the analogy that makes this click. Imagine the only appraisers allowed to officially price any house in America all work within 150 miles of one city. They aren't bad people, they just have one worldview, one set of relationships, and one geographic bubble. And if they say your house is worth $300,000, that's the number the whole market uses. You can disagree, but you can't transact outside their system. That is COMEX. That is your gold. And Texas just built a vault outside that system and explicitly said they want to change the rule. Glenn Hegar said it out loud. We're not moving Texas to get closer, but if the depository is successful, then we will hopefully get to a point where COMEX will want us to be part of their system. That is the Texas Comptroller, on the record, challenging the geographic concentration of gold price infrastructure. And I know that sounds like the kind of thing that comes just before someone says something crazy. So here's the official document. Governor Abbott's office, when he signed the bill, increasing the security and stability of our gold reserves and keeping taxpayer funds from leaving Texas to pay for fees to store gold in facilities outside our state. That's from the governor's own press office. They built competing infrastructure because they wanted an alternative to New York. It's on the record. And look, I'm just a guy who buys houses for a living. But when a state government builds a sovereign vault specifically to challenge who controls the custody and pricing infrastructure of your hard assets, I want to know about it, and I thought you should too. If noticing your bank statement doesn't match what they're saying on television makes you a conspiracy theorist, all right, I guess that's what I am. But I'd rather be a conspiracy theorist with a funded war chest. If you're over 50, you've lived through enough of these once-in-a-generation events that happen every 8 years, seemingly like clockwork, to trust your gut here. You don't need an economics degree. You just need a grocery receipt from 2019 and one from today. And here's the question nobody in financial media is asking. Wyoming set aside $10 million for a state gold reserve. 5 states passed sound money laws this year. Texas has over $400 million in deposited metal in a sovereign vault. At what point does that start to quietly pressure how Washington manages the dollar? It happened in Europe before Bretton Woods. The documented motive is simple: security, independence, and a custody option that doesn't depend on New York. I'm not here to scare you. I'm here to make sure you see what's developing before it hits your balance sheet. Now, here's where the rubber meets the road. In 2008, People in fully diversified traditional portfolios watched 30 to 50% of their savings evaporate in 18 months. People who had allocated a portion to gold watched it climb from $800 to $1,900, while the so-called safe portfolios struggled to breathe. Your financial advisor was working from a playbook written in a different inflation environment. Here's what I'd be considering instead. First, the TXBD IRA move. If you hold a gold IRA, or you're thinking about one, you can now store your metals in a state-administered vault with state audit authority and Texas State Police on site, instead of a private custodian that could get acquired or go bankrupt or change its fee structure next year. That is a different level of asset protection. Second, go look at your gold allocation. If you put 5% in gold a few years ago and haven't checked since, that number has likely grown on its own just from price appreciation. Gold is now above $5,000 an ounce as I'm recording this. What started as 5% of your portfolio might be 10 or 20% today. Whether that's enough, too much, or just right depends on your situation, but you should at least know the number before you make any moves. Third, the physical asset check. Pull your retirement account statement right now. Find the line item for hard assets, physical real estate, physical metals, things where you actually hold the deed or the title. If that number is 0, that's your data point. You know your position. And here's my honest read on where this goes. State governments didn't build guarded hard asset infrastructure without a reason. Whether it's inflation, distrust of Washington, or plain fiscal prudence, legislators decided they wanted a hard asset backstop on the balance sheet. Texas did it. Wyoming did it. Others are following. You don't have to agree with their politics to see the signal. You now have the intel. You've got the playbook. That's the difference between you and everyone else who scrolled past this video. So here's the choice. Leave your retirement in dollar-denominated accounts with advisors operating on 2010 assumptions and hope the environment cooperates. Or spend 20 minutes learning about the infrastructure Texas built specifically for the scenario where it doesn't. One path is passive. The other is an active defense. Now, if you're sitting there thinking you want to look at gold after this, I get it. I've got the bug too. But I need you to hear one more thing before you call anyone. The same environment driving people toward gold has attracted a specific kind of dealer who is very good at separating people from their money before they know what happened. We're talking markups of 30 to 50% over spot price, hidden inside coins they call collectibles. On a $50,000 purchase, that one move costs you over $12,000 the moment you sign. Not eventually, immediately, gone. And that's exactly why I made this video right here for you to watch next. It's a 10-point vetting script that exposes hidden spreads, bait and switch tactics, and the collectible coin pitch that sounds legitimate and costs you a fortune. You know, you've done the hard work of understanding why hard assets matter right now. This one right here makes sure that you don't hand that advantage to the wrong person in the last 5 minutes.